Hello, I'm Matt. I'm a teacher and I'm about to take up the role of head teacher at St Peter's Primary School in September, and I'm delighted to be with you today to share a little thought for the day. Now, me and my family, we've been away the last week and a bit. We've been travelling up and down the country. Went to London for a few days, which was lovely, but it involved quite a lot of car journeys, and if you have two young children like we do, long car journeys can be quite stressful, especially as they're of the age where they don't now fall asleep after 5 minutes. Lots of are we nearly there yet, and I'm bored, and what can we do now kind of thing. Well, we ended up playing lots of games in the car. There's not much you can do, but we ended up playing a game called What's Your Favourite? Where you'd ask each other favourite colour, favourite board game, favourite TV show, favourite movie. These journeys were long. We ended up discussing our favourite trees and favourite t-shirts, yes. Anyway, and it's a good topic of conversation, isn't it? What's the greatest, or what's the best, or what's your favourite? There always seems to be TV shows about the top 10 movies of all time, the top 10 songs of all time, the top 10 comedy characters of all time. It seems a popular thing to make TV shows about, and it always was. Even 2,000 years ago, that kind of conversation went on. In today's Bible passage that I'm going to think about, from Matthew chapter 18, the disciples were talking, and it starts by saying, "At that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, 'Who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?'" Now, can you remember what answer Jesus gave? Because I bet it shocked the disciples. They might have been expecting him to say someone like Moses or Abraham or someone like that, but that's not what Jesus said. This is what Jesus said. He said, "He called a little child to him and placed a child among them. And he said, 'Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever takes the lowly position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven.'" So yeah, Jesus said the least among us will be the greatest in heaven. And he demonstrated that by bringing a child to them. Now, I'm a teacher. I'm surrounded by children every day. And one phrase that you used to hear a lot, didn't you, was children should be seen and not heard. Let me tell you, that's utter rubbish. I hate that phrase. It's absolutely not true. As a teacher, I learn so much from listening and watching and seeing what children do. You learn about acceptance, about sharing, about kindness, joy in the little things, trust and openness. So, what did we think? What did Jesus mean by this? What do you think Jesus meant by the greatest is the least, and demonstrating that with a child? I mean, he clearly didn't mean we should never grow up. He clearly didn't mean we should spend all day watching CBeebies, however great that channel is. I think he meant us to trust like a child. See, children, especially the very young, they're completely dependent on the adults around them. Dependent for them for food, for shelter, for clothing, and for love. At school, the children are completely dependent on the teachers. We tell them what they're going to learn. We tell them when they're going to learn it. They don't have a choice in that. We make the decisions for them. They trust us. They trust that we're teaching them facts and not making things up as we go along. They might not like what we do. Maths and PE seem to cause some resentment sometimes, but they know we do it because we have their best interests at heart. We care and we want the very best for them. And I think that's what Jesus meant by that. We have to have that sort of trust in him and in God. To do what he says, to trust his judgment, to know that everything Jesus does is for our own good. Now, that's not easy, just like being in a maths lesson. And we may wonder what's going on at times, and we know bad things happen to good people, and things happen that are unfair, and it does make us question. But I think that's when God asks us to trust him the most. So, my little question for you today, How much do you trust God? In the Bible, God says he has a plan for us to give us hope and a future. Do we trust him in that? Or do we try to go our own way, thinking we know best? If we are to follow Jesus, then we're to become like a child, totally dependent on God, totally trusting in him. And that's a challenge. And that's something to think about and to pray about. And I'll leave you now to ponder it further and to see how that applies to your life. So I wonder what the greatest job in the world is. I often think teaching is. No day is the same, it's never boring. Working with children brings a lot of joy. And the holidays are great too. Never underestimate a child. Never write them off. I mean, you only have to look at the likes of Greta Thunberg and Malala Yousafzai to see how young people can change the world if they are listened to. I'd say children should be seen and heard. We adults can learn a lot from children. So, maybe Jesus knew what he was talking about after all. Goodbye, and God bless you all.